Thanks so much, you guys, for joining us today. We had some technology issues getting this whole Zoom thing going. But anyway, thank you for coming back to the channel. I am Bree Lambert, and this is a Coach's Talk. Joining me today, all the way in St. Petersburg, Florida, is Coach Gary Saxton. And just to tell you a little bit about Gary before we get started, Gary has a number of running accomplishments. He is a 5-time Boston Marathon finisher. He's also a former U.S. Army captain, Army Ranger, Special Forces, and a 3rd-degree black belt. So he has a number of just impressive accomplishments under his belt. He's not just a marathon runner, but he's also a very decorated military person. So anyway, with all that, Gary, thank you so much for joining me today. Sorry if I stumbled a little bit. As a coach, I know you coach distance runners, and you've been living out in Florida for the last 2 years, formerly here in California. But with everything that's happening right now, I thought it would be really good to have a conversation with you about the pandemic the crisis that we're in right now, and just to get some perspective from your side of the country in terms of how this is impacting your running community, how it's impacting you as a coach, how you're motivating your runners to keep training despite the fact that we're seeing so many races across the country and around the globe get postponed or canceled. So I thought that I would check in with you just to get a feel for what's happening. What's going on in this side of the country?
Yeah, you're right. It's a very interesting time, and we're seeing a lot of interesting reactions among people in general, and also specifically among runners. And I think it is a little bit different in how people are approaching their training. And I think that from my perspective, I'm seeing very different reactions among those that I coach. All of them extremely positive, and it's making me very proud of them as people, and also proud of them as runners, and proud to be working with them, because it's a very positive reaction that I wish would spread throughout the population, actually. But specifically, let me comment on a few things. First of all, what I've advised runners to do at this point is take this time to make sure that you are training for immune system strength, because at the end of the day, or earlier than that, you really want to have the immune system strong so that if you're exposed to this thing, you can handle it. So this is not the time to be training to the point where you're breaking down your body and you're in a state of weakness because of the excessive training. So that, first and foremost, I think guides how I ask the runners that I'm working with to think about their training. So that's number one. So number two is that nobody's training for races right now, because all the races in the near term have been canceled. So this is a great opportunity to kind of look at your training in a whole different way, because you're not now on some kind of month-to-month schedule in preparation for a marathon where you have to do very specific things and have to meet mileage and pace requirements. This is a time where you can step back and almost have free reign over your training. So in all cases, the runners that I'm coaching are absolutely training as hard or harder than they were with the race schedule, but they're training in different ways. So I would say that how they're approaching it is a little bit specific to what their running goals are. So, for example, in one instance, a runner that I coach is really trying to fine-tune his running efficiency. So for a lot of reasons, he's a fast runner, but the pace and the distance and the heart rate all really weren't coming together like they should be. And he's now, we've talked about it a bit, focused on how cadence can improve that. And he's come up with a whole new formula now that's manifesting in his running at faster paces, at a lower heart rate, with an increased cadence. So his conclusion is that he's running faster, more comfortably, and with a cadence or a turnover that's greater. And he's really liking it. So now, eventually, he'll be able to take that into his racing schedule, and I think be able to put that to good use to optimize his racing performance. So that's just one example. But let me stop there so we can
so
ask you another question.
So I guess what I'm curious about is, the runners that you're coaching, are they the majority of them running for big distance, so marathon distance, or are they running a variety of distances?
Well, they are running a variety of distances, but the common theme is they will be running or have been running road marathons.
Okay.
And 26.2 road marathons.
Right. And so where you live, I'm assuming there are a lot of runners in that community. So, for example, with their training, where are you suggesting they run? Because here in California, we have a full-blown shelter-in-place happening. And on any given day, there are changes being made to, for example, I'm an ultramarathon runner, so there are state parks now that have closed. The county parks are threatening to close, which poses a huge problem for a trail runner. And so the thought of that is actually quite terrifying. So if you're a trail runner and you can't run your trails, well, then you have to resort to running on roads. So now you are training marathon runners for road marathons. And so how do you suggest they navigate through the challenges of just being outside and being on roadways and with a shelter in place as well, and just kind of give me a little sense of how you direct them through.
Well, they all, of course, I think it's a lot easier, certainly in an environment like this, to train on roads. Roads are everywhere. We have some pretty scenic places along the water, and we call them trails, kind of ironically, but they are asphalt or concrete, but they run alongside the water, and early in the morning, it's really beautiful out there. So there are a number of these routes, and a big number of them. And you can, have a lot of variety in the different courses that you run, but they're very, very available. There's also another asphalt trail. Again, we call it a trail, but it goes not only across this from St. Petersburg to the west side of the city, but then up, and it goes for I think approximately 70 miles or something like that. And I've never fully run that, but you can keep running on that. So it does cross roads, but not that many of them. And certainly when you're downtown, you have to watch out, but that's another option as well. But most of the runners are running locally along the water, and it's really kind of neat. You see it very early in the morning. This is in contrast to California. This is a city where runners are out really early, 5:30, dark. This morning I was out, I think somewhere around there, and caught the full moon on the first part of my run and the sunrise by the time I finished. So it can be really beautiful, that time of morning. Cars are not on the road as much. Cyclists are not on the road as much. And you do have a lot of flexibility there. But runners are taking full advantage of it. So there really isn't that limitation that's a problem. And of course, exercise is one of those essential things that people can do even under, whatever the terms are of isolation.
Right. And so are they wearing masks and gloves? I mean, are you running with a mask and glove? I mean,
No.
are you making any adjustments?
I haven't seen anybody do that. I've seen some cyclists do that, but I haven't seen any runner running with masks or gloves or anything. And frankly, I think people are trying now, but very recently on the social distancing thing. Up until probably a week ago, I was still seeing runners running next to each other and not paying much attention to that. But I think it's people are doing that a lot better now.
And when you train, are you concerned about exposure? Are you taking any precautions to protect yourself?
Not at all. I think I'm just going out and doing my run, but I'm conscious of other people, and particularly walkers, particularly people that are a little bit older, and absolutely try to stay away. Go out of my way to stay away, and also it's sort of a mixed feeling of like social engagement, talking, saying good morning. Because some people, I think, feel a little uncomfortable. They don't want to do that. And maybe it's because it's, first thing in the morning, or they're out there and they feel like they're isolated. Or maybe it's because they just don't want to have the possibility of having, having an interaction that would result in some, contagious effect. So I think that I'm kind of cognizant of that and try to pretty much steer clear when I can.
And so for you personally, I know you have had races canceled and or postponed. Are you concerned at all about your preparedness? Boston, for example. So Boston usually is in April, and now it's been moved to September. So, how are you adjusting personally?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that one up, because there was one afternoon within a period of 2 hours, all 3 of my spring races were canceled.
Oh, wow.
And it all hit at the same time, same day, and it was amazing. So unfortunately, I, like many others, started to cancel the hotels, cancel the flights, reschedule the flights,
Right.
and some of the races. Let's see, 2 of them are postponed till next year, and then Boston is postponed until September. So I fully plan to do that in September, and the other 2 I'll plan to do next year.
So let's kind of back up a little bit. So, we talked about motivation. I think we touched on it. I think that seems to keep coming up for a lot of people in general, whether you're an athlete or not. Just how do you stay motivated when you are restricted to, your home, basically? I mean, you've got time, as you said, when you can go out and exercise, but it's what would you suggest an athlete do, or general fitness person do to stay motivated for the duration of this time?
Well, I think that I'm pretty fortunate in that the athletes that I'm working with are already very motivated. In fact, I would say that adding to the motivation is not at all anything that I'm concerned about. They're already motivated, but in a different way now. Again, it's not being motivated for race performance, because there isn't the race coming up. Oh, actually, in one case, there is in July. Right now, so that at least it's on the horizon. It's not something that's that far away. But I think the motivation piece is, I think, in a couple of different categories. One is stress relief. So it is a tough time, and so getting out there to run in the morning when you have that chance, or run at any time of the day, it's a good opportunity to sort of decompress a little bit. And I think that people are doing that, including the runners that I'm working with. So that's a good thing. And in fact, one runner, we've been trying to stage it, so build a foundation, a gradual foundation that involved a running frequency of 4 days a week. But because of what was going on, and because of the extra time this runner had without having as many professional responsibilities, the runner himself wanted to kick it up a notch.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I want to run more. Can I run more?
Oh, geez.
You know?
Right.
So, you know, the physical aspects of that, you know, insignificant. The psychological aspects of that, very significant. So we developed, we changed the plan, and now he's running at greater frequency, and I think is happier to do that. So that's one way to handle it. I think another way is that you know, just looking at running as lifestyle.
Right.
So
Yeah.
in one case, this is something that this individual wants to do for the rest of his life if he can.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way you can do it is for the rest of your life. Well, you got to stay uninjured. That's one thing. But you also really have to enjoy it. You have to make it a lifestyle.
Right.
And so if you're always training for races, it adds a certain degree of stress and nervousness and all those things. This is a period of time where you don't have any of that. So, you know, we've talked about just going out and enjoying it. Just, you know, understand, you know, where you are. Take the extra time to, you know, to look at nature out there and observe what's around you, and just enjoy the whole process without worrying about what your pace is and what your, you know, what your distance is. And I think that that's a very, very positive thing. I think this individual is, he's always enjoyed running, but looking at it in a way that really encourages it over a lifetime. And I think that's a very, very positive thing. And he would have probably been there anyway, but I think this experience going through this is actually adding to the idea that running can be a very positive aspect of one's lifestyle.
Right, exactly. And I can't agree with you more. I think that's really important, and those are great things to point out. So for you, give me a little bit of your training style in terms of like what are you focusing on specifically for yourself at this time, and then I'm going to follow that question up with give us a favorite workout of yours.
So for me also, this is an opportunity to really try some things, experiment a little bit. You know, I just yesterday had developed a specific workout that I wanted to put in place for one of the runners to get her started on a little bit more tempo training. And so it was a kind of a specific workout. You won't find it in the running books, but I wanted to create the example of here's what you do, here's how it should look, here's how your you know, it was sort of a little bit of tongue-in-cheek around flatten the curve, because what I want to do is flatten the HR curve. I want to steady HR as a proxy for intensity all the way through. So don't come, you know, HR fluctuating all around. Don't sprint at the end. Don't die at the end.
Just stay steady.
You know,
just more steady.
Steady all the way through. Feel like when you get to the end, you could run all the way through 26.2 miles. So, you know, that was kind of a specific thing, and at a certain, within a certain range, or pace and HR range. So I actually went out and did it myself. Now, you know, different ranges, different, you know, numbers, but at least went out and did that workout, and then she would be able to see how that actually looks when it kind of comes back and you look at it afterwards, how that HR is heart rate is very flat all the way to the end. So, you know, so that's one of the things that I do. So there's a little bit of experimenting. The other thing I do is just to mix it up a little bit, make it fun, and encourage the runners that I coach to do the same. So, you know, things I wouldn't normally do, but, you know, might do from now. You know, things like working in fartleks into my run, you know, and just kind of doing that. And in my case, I put it at the end of the run, but, you know, I did that. It was helpful to me. It was sort of in lieu of doing striders at the end of a run. And so I found that to be kind of interesting. I may incorporate that into my own training, later. But I think in general, what I like to stick to is a lot of easy runs, and then 1 or 2 hard runs in a week, in addition to a longer run in a week. So a basic idea is easy runs around hard runs. Hard runs, not too many of them, 1 or 2, usually 1 for me and for those that I coach, in addition to the long run, which I would also consider hard just because of the distance. So, that's sort of my training for myself, and that's roughly the model that I use. It kind of depends on where they are, what they're training for, and those kinds of things, but roughly the model I use for the marathon training for those that I coach.
Awesome. Good. Well, Gary, okay, so one final question I have for you is, what do you fuel with? I'm just curious, like, what are your go-to fueling items? Do you use gels? Do you use blocks? Are you a whole food guy? I mean, I'm just curious.
That's a good question. So first of all, I'll tell you what I fuel with going out the door. There is a school of thought that, well, you can not eat anything and you shouldn't eat anything and you can burn fat when you go and work out. Yeah, I think that conceptually that makes sense, but it makes for a lousy workout. You're going to feel terrible. Now that feeling terrible may help you, but you still feel terrible. I don't like to feel terrible. I like to feel good. So I will eat something in addition to a cup of coffee. I will eat usually an English muffin. Cinnamon raisin is my favorite.
An English muffin
and a cup of coffee about an hour before going out. And I don't have stomach problems. I got used to that. Now, if my run is less than 2 hours, I may not have anything.
Oh, okay. So it depends on how long you're out there.
It does. I think, for mostly I'm running now 10 miles and it's less than an hour and a half and I don't need anything. For long runs, though, I will. And this is where it becomes interesting because I don't want to, well, I will say it. The poor man's gel, the secret now, the poor man's gel, Fig Newtons.
Fig Newton. Oh, right. That's right. I remember.
So each of those little blocks have about 50 calories. So 2 of them for the equivalent of a gel, about 100 calorie gel, 2 Fig Newtons. They also have both sodium and potassium in there. So you get your electrolytes and you get your carbs and you get those calories equivalent to a gel in 2 Fig Newtons.
You get the sugars too.
Now you need water. You do need that.
Right.
So they are dry. There are some compromises, but I'll use that more than anything on the long runs. But I do get a little bit more specific, prior to the marathon to make and use gels, just like I will use during a marathon. But to use them every long run, A, it's expensive, and B, they're not very great tasting to me.
Yeah.
I much prefer the Fig Newtons. So that's usually what I'm doing. And you do need to eat over the course of the marathon. Sure. And if you're going to eat during the race, you better train eating before the race. And the long runs are really the opportunity to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. No, excellent. Well, Gary, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for, being a part of the channel today. And you guys, thanks for tuning in for this Coach's Talk. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And you can also follow me at Catch the Breeze. If you guys want to know a little bit more about Gary, how can runners find you? Like, I know you tweet.
No, I try not to. I am on Facebook, so you can find me there. But
you can find him on Facebook.
Otherwise, they can find me through you and find me out on the roads. So,
awesome.
But I am on Facebook. I do.
Perfect.
The way I coach is very individualized, and I don't really open it up so much. I carefully choose those that I really I enjoy working with, and will continue to do that. So I don't really advertise as much as maybe some of the other coaches will.
All right. Well, thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bree. It was a pleasure.